Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth segment in our week-long exploration of creative Sandbox gallery uses of our technology. We have a really fun couple of things we're going to look at today. Today we're going to be looking at some Google Plus API usage. It's pretty kinetic. There's a lot of action involved, so I think it should be a pretty exciting and pretty fun conversation. Before we begin, I want to introduce a colleague of mine out on the West Coast. Please note his powerful mustache. Jonathan, can you say hello?
Hey, how's it going? My name is Jonathan Berry. I'm the developer advocate for Google+.
Great. So Jonathan is going to be here to answer questions that the agencies have, answer questions that viewers have. So as you guys are watching this, if things come up that you would like answered either by the folks at the agencies who built these very fun applications or by Jonathan on the developers team here at Google, please go ahead and put those into our moderator tool, and we'll put that link up over the course of this Hangout. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. We will answer everything we get. With that said, let's go ahead and we're going to talk with Resin first, followed by Goodby and Hook. Let's take a look at Resin's video so you have a sense of what they did with the Google Plus API.
Resin presents Face Arcade, a Google Hangouts game. Do you want to game with your friends online but get tired of all the cables? Using powerful Google and Resin technologies, you can now control games using only your face and a webcam.
But how many games, Face Arcade?
How many, you ask? Face Arcade gives you not none, not two, not even four, but 4 lifelike games.
Or no actual CDs.
Still exists. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a snake? Wonder no more. Control a caterpillar with your face and Browzilla. It's the next best thing.
What about ancient history?
Old news!
The Greeks were notorious for fun. Were you?
With Face Arcade's Techno Yawn, you can now play a tastefully reimagined Rome of the Ages. This unlimited time offer from Face Arcade also includes Naughty Nelly.
Nice nodding.
What about feline manipulation through the power of self-hypnosis?
Impossible!
Now you can harness your inner mentalism in the comfort of your own fireplace. Best of all, Google Hangouts lets you play against your friends all across the world and battle in a face-to-face-to-face-to-face
Face Arcade off.
No more playing solo. Best of all, Face Arcade is free.
What how?
It won't take 1, not even 2, but just 3 easy steps. First, go to your Google account. Start a Hangout. Don't forget to add your friends. Then, add the app. It's that simple. You'll be battling your friends in no time. Play!
Face Arcade!
Made in Resin.
Resin presents Face Arcade, a Google Hangouts game.
All right, so Face Arcade. So the first question I have for you guys at Resin before you introduce yourselves is: are you certain that no one will get a concussion with your game? So once we answer that, if you guys over at Resin, can you give us a quick intro and a walkthrough of who's on the line today and what your roles are at the agency?
Sure. Firstly, we accept no responsibility for any damage caused by playing the game. I'm Mark, the producer at Resin.
I'm Wade, art director at Resin.
My name's Emlyn, I'm a senior developer at Resin. And I'm Brandel, I'm an experienced developer at Resin.
All right. For those of you watching, it is like 8:30 in the morning for them out in New Zealand. So if it looks a little dark and they look a little tired, it's they're being real troopers in the office that early. So guys, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions, and just would love to hear your takes on what it took to develop what you did, where the ideas came from, who was involved. So let's just start with what was the idea generation process, because this is obviously a very fun, very funny, but also very unexpected use of the technology. How did you guys come up with the idea? Well, who generated that idea, and who got together to say this is what we should do?
I think the idea just came from looking at all the different things we could get from the API and realizing that we could get some really interesting random stuff out of it. The goal was just to make something really ridiculous and fun, and so I guess we started looking at all the APIs and just going, what can we do with this that's going to make all the users look completely absurd and ridiculous? That was probably one of the initial key points that we hit upon, which was kind of the creative hook for the whole idea. Just making people look ridiculous.
Excellent. And
I think it's too with the with the social engagement, bringing everyone down to a level of looking really ridiculous. We were hoping that the game was going to work as kind of a social lubricant in Hangouts.
Yeah.
all right, so making people look ridiculous together. That was the creative idea. Excellent, I love it, and it does do that, and it is super fun. How did you guys interact with the technology? So when I say that, you said there's lots of things that you realized the API could do. How did you A, figure out what was possible, and B, then say, okay, out of all of these possibilities, these are the 5 or 6 elements we want to work with, and we'll build a game around a handful of these. How did you guys go through that?
At first we didn't realize how the data would be presented, how noisy it would be. We knew that we wanted to work with particular tracking elements. So the ideas were born from these individual elements, and then the ideas were refined once we knew how high fidelity the data was coming out of it. Probably Brandel and Emily would be better to talk about that process of the testing of the data there.
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty good documentation around it, so looking through that gave us a good idea about the types of the points on the face that you're getting tracked and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was sort of breaking it down into facial elements and saying, okay, well, yeah, what's going to look silly? Okay, yeah, moving forward and back really quickly with your head, that's going to look pretty silly. What sort of creative can we stick that with?
So when you were doing that, so you found the points, of the face that could be read, and then the motions that you could detect with that. How did you guys test that? I mean, did you just have a lot of people in house, like going like this a lot, or how did you figure out that it was actually going to work?
Yeah, pretty much. We had a lot of squeaking seats. You'd be sitting around coding, and you just hear this like, you turn around and someone would be like rocking around on their seats, and yeah, fortunately we had a couple of interns at the time. They got pretty good workouts, sort of super strong neck muscles. And
excellent. So a lot of in-house user testing going on to make sure that it was accurate and it worked. Let me ask you this: who all was involved building this? Because it sounds like the idea came to you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like it came pretty quickly. You figured out, okay, we can make people look silly, and then we can map that to something that'd be fun and competitive but social. Who did you pull in and say, this is the team that's going to come up with what the games are going to look like, what the games are, how it's going to be technically feasible? How did you determine who was going to be involved?
It was open season for the whole team across Resin, Wellington and Amsterdam. We're about 20 strong all in all.
Okay.
But I guess the full development team and the full kind of production team ended up being around 10 people. But it was all open season. Everyone throughout Resin could contribute ideas. The creative process went from the very start to the very end of the production cycle. People could throw a gag in here and there all the way through.
Great.
But I guess, yeah.
And who made a decision, or was it just that group of 10? Is that who made the decisions as to, okay, here's the 50 ideas that we're gonna make it into the 5? Is that how that worked?
Pretty much. We kind of boiled this. This was all kind of at the pitch process around the time we were invited to collaborate in the Hangout Hackathon. So we had a lot of ideas at that point, and we boiled them all down. I think
we tried to make a kind of a ridiculous matrix of all the key points that we wanted to fulfill with the ideas, ranging from like feasibility right up to like awesomeness. So we had to tick all the boxes, and each concept kind of had to just run through this thorough checklist, make sure it was good enough, and yeah, it went from there. And I guess one of the key things about having a game with a lot of little micro games in it was good for getting everyone on the team a little piece of the project that they could own. So there's a lot of people just working on little separate elements, bringing those together, and I think that kind of adds to the creative of it as well. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of wackiness, a lot of insanity, and it's just because it comes from like all across the board.
Yeah, that was one of the good things, that because it was sort of so modular, we could divide it up into some nice sort of discrete chunks and sort of hand it off to sort of smaller sets of one designer, one developer kind of thing. So that was it was a nice way to do it, I think.
Interesting. So it was actually a very decentralized setup when it comes to the individual pieces, rather than having a particular creative or a particular developer say, I am the one who's going to approve everything and design this, and they'll have people work on it. It sounds like it was very much a ground up, lots and lots of people making all these individual pieces that you guys stitched together, which is a really interesting way to go about it. On the note of how you actually got it made, sounds like all these discrete teams kind of had their pieces and made them, and then you pulled it together. Did you guys have help from our side, from the Google side, or is this something that you guys did totally on your own? You had the API, you understood it, put it together. How did that work?
Yeah, no, it was pretty much just looking through the API documentation to get a good idea of what was there, and then I think we did some prototyping and some testing just to see what sort of data came out of it and how we might use it.
And the framework that we put together for everybody to work within.
So we had a sort of a framework that managed all the sort of the multiplayer aspects, the server-side stuff, and then we had each of the individual games sort of just worked by themselves, and then so we had teams working on each of the games, and then we had sort of an overall sort of architecture to pull them all together and make it sort of one sort of linear process.
So that they could just basically plug their piece of the game into the.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Yeah. On the technical side, what was the one, if there was one, was there one particular hurdle that was quite difficult, technically speaking, or anything that you guys really had trouble getting through?
I think we underestimated the difficulty in setting up some sort of peer-based multiplayer sort of system. So we had a basic system to begin with, and it kind of quickly became apparent that it wasn't going to hold up. So we went back to the drawing board basically and spent a lot more time planning out how all the multiplayer interaction was going to work, because you're not dealing with a centralized server, and this stuff is all sort of peer-to-peer. There's a bit more complication involved in coordinating a lot of the multiplayer aspects.
That makes sense. So when did that occur? When did that issue come up? Was it early on, or was it like the week before?
Reasonably late in the game. I think probably about a week out. We sort of realised we were going to have to sit down and do some more in-depth planning. But what we came up with, which was really good, it ended up being reasonably robust, and it was an interesting architectural experience. Yeah, they have to go through.
It always comes up about a week before, doesn't it?
Too late night.
How long was the development process all told? I mean, obviously, give or take. What was the general timeline like for you guys?
I think we were planning to try and we spent a week of kind of initial planning and pre-production, and then we were trying to hit a game a day for the hackathon in the second week, and we almost got there. I think we planned on doing 5 games. We ended up getting to 4, and then after the 2 weeks, we had a reasonably solid product, but there was a few things that we weren't quite happy with. So I think we spent probably another week or so just sort of polishing things up and cleaning them up, getting them to a better standard. So yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks, I think.
3 or 4 weeks. Wow. Okay, so that was actually really quick. That's really amazing. Actually, I didn't realize that you guys put this together so rapidly. How did you get the word out, or how did you get people involved in the game? Is it something where you it was completely viral? You told your friends, said tell your friends. What did you guys do to get people to know that the game was there?
We made a ridiculous video. Pretty much that was our whole campaign. Just make a ridiculous video. Just, I guess, trying to show people how much fun they can have with something free, and just sent that around wherever we could, and it seemed to get picked up quite well, and hopefully got people playing it as well.
We also tried communicating out every day during development. Every single day we blogged, and we put on our Google Plus page and our Facebook page. So we tried to communicate all the way through the process.
Resin Labs has got a lot of there's a blog, I think, almost every second day at least on Resin Labs, going through the process, kind of feeling our pain as we kind of rush towards the deadline. So that's full of a lot of the development kind of process there. We can look back on it with,
But you were actually broadcasting the fact that it was going to be coming during the actual development process. Is that true? Is that what you just mentioned?
Yeah.
Interesting. So you didn't wait until it was a polished product ready to launch and give it a big launch. You guys were were letting people in as it was happening, as it was being built.
Yeah, we were conscious of the need to make something that would be able to stand up aesthetically throughout that development process. So we made sure that the kind of the visual style and the interactions were such that we could show them at any point and they would be still pretty hilarious, confusing and shocking, but also quite appealing.
All right, so I guess just one last question for you guys on the broader front. Given that you guys did 4 games in a handful of weeks, you got kind of slammed at the last minute on how multiple servers were going to work with the architecture. You were giving out little bits and pieces and images and ideas as you were developing it to the public. If someone wanted to do something similar, if someone said, I want to do something like that, I want to do within a month develop something really fun with the Hangouts API, and I kind of want to follow their path, what would be the one big piece of advice that you would give them?
I guess from a technical point of view, probably the debugging we found reasonably difficult in that there's a lot of noise, a lot of communications going on, there's a lot of things talking, so your sort of debug consoles and things fill up pretty quickly. So we ended up outputting a lot of our debug stuff to a front end sort of UI, so you could read the debug information on the web page rather than through your consoles and stuff like that. So I think debugging is a pretty important part of the developmental process. So yeah, that was one thing that we had to try and establish fairly early on to make sure that it was a smoother ride.
Yeah.
So debugging, put it up front. Anything?
Get it on the screen.
Anything from the creative side that you would recommend?
I think it's important to make sure that how you're taking all that data, you've still at the end of the day you've got to turn it into something entertaining, and there's a lot of freedom with what you can do with face tracking. It's pretty massive, really. So I think if you're looking for a creative idea, you don't have to look too far with something like that to really start getting into some really insane territory.
It was also really easy to get up and going as well. So anyone looking to do any development in it, we got things working on screen really quickly. So within a matter of hours, it was we had things tracking to faces and moving around.
Shared state and even making single games was really simple. The only complexity was when we had a follow the leader, and if it was 2-player, then it would be simpler as well. So there are a lot of things that can come straight out of the box.
Great. Folks over at Goodby, why don't we start with you guys? If you just want to give like a quick round of introduction of who is on the call today.
Yeah, sure.
Hey there, I'm Dean Rubenstein. I'm the account lead across all things Google here at Goodby.
And I'm account manager Jessica Hardy for Google Plus here at Goodby.
And I'm Lisa, the assistant account manager for Google at Goodby.
Okay. And now folks over at Hook.
Hello, my name is Michael Watts. I'm a producer at Hook.
I'm Aaron Schwartz. I'm the creative lead here at Hook.
So you guys get headbands.
Oh yeah, we made the thing.
I'm Chris. I'm a technical director at Hook.
I'm Brad. I did the game development here.
All right, very cool. So thank you guys. I think this looks like a very fun game to play when it launches publicly. Why don't you guys give us just an overview of where the idea came from, how you worked together to develop it, and just what the back end idea was. Why did you guys come up with this particular use of the API?
Sure. Well, I think it started with some of the really cool features like the facial tracking effects that we really wanted to highlight and do something cool with, something that's never been done before. And just knowing that social gaming is very popular, we wanted to kind of take advantage of that competitive spin and put together a really cool game that would show those features.
We also wanted to do something that was fun for us and something that also hadn't kind of been overdone, in the sphere. And ping pong was something that a lot of folks here kind of do to blow off steam or ideate, and we thought everybody else might want the same. So.
Great. And so between Goodby and Hook, how did you guys work together on this? What was the connection point and the responsibilities? How did that break out?
So it's very collaborative. I know we've spent a lot of quality time with Hook going back and forth developing this game. There was a lot of code that went into putting it together. So I mean, ultimately it ended up, us being the go-between with Google and Hook. So once they would develop it, we would vet it, and then when there was feedback, we'd go back to Hook, and it's, just look for where we could make enhancements and make it the smoothest possible game.
We knew that Hook was super attuned to detail, as we are over at the Goodby team, and they're, really great at paying attention to this kind of thing, so they're excellent to work with throughout the whole process.
Plus, once they hire us, they can't get rid of us, so.
We didn't want to say it, but.
So what was the idea generation process like over at Goodby? How did you guys come up with this? Who was involved? Was this one person's spark of genius? Was it a group of people working together? How did this come about?
Well, I think it was really an all hands on deck sort of situation. I mean, we had production, concepting, creative concepting. I mean, account people were involved. I mean, everybody was, pretty much had hands in it. And I just think with the amount of times that we've played and seen the process, you discover things as the development process goes that enhance the creative. So, I mean, it's been a work in progress.
And I also know that we really, Hangouts has these incredible features such as, Hangout effects and facial tracking, and we really wanted to leverage those features. So a lot of our game development was based on figuring out how we could enhance them and make them really fun and incorporate them into a game, and that drove a lot of our creative process.
Interesting. So the technology drove some of the ideation in this case. It wasn't, we have this idea, let's figure out what technology works. It was, this technology has lots of opportunities. What can we do that's interesting with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely went both ways.
I think it's a lot of the real-time type of stuff when you're dealing with working on a new platform and seeing what works and actually getting really excited and self-correcting as you go along, which is also something that we were excited to take on here. So.
Great. So who worked on the project? Obviously, you guys have introduced yourselves. I assume the team was a little larger. So both on the Goodby side and on the Hook side, what were the roles that had to come together to really make this happen? Was it a massive group of people? Was it a very small group? What was that like?
Well, I think our interactive producer was obviously very heavily involved in making sure that all the game updates were flowing. And then also we had operations involved just because we are coordinating with several people on our end. Right. I know we have a few creative minds in here who have put some input into the copy and the look and feel of it, but ultimately that was established, I think, early on by some of our top teams.
It was a little bit of everybody, and then of course the core team coming together. And kind of the good thing for us about having a wide net is that we had a lot of fresh eyes. So over the course of the project, we'd have a lot of people using it and seeing how they can enhance it. Quite a few kitchen tables at milestones to see how we can make the project better and better. So.
Great. And on the technical side, folks over at Hook, but also at Goodby as well, was there anything that happened during the development process that was a particularly difficult hurdle that you guys had to get over, or was it all smooth sailing the whole way through?
I mean, it's rare that a project is all smooth sailing. I think anybody will admit that. Thankfully, we've done quite a bit of Hangouts API work before we jumped into this with Goodby. And we were on a very condensed timeline, and we essentially had about 2 weeks to get our first prototype out, and then around 8 weeks to fulfill the first run of the project. So we like to approach those types of things as an iterative process. So some rapid prototyping, got the first version out in 2 weeks or less, and got people playing it, and then started rolling in different API features, adding to the game, and kind of making it a more rich user experience, as opposed to trying to implement 20 features up front, show the game halfway through, and then fix what we can before we went out. So it was a very evolutionary type development process. We started off with playing with your mouse, and that was kind of lame, and we tried other input methods, and ultimately netted out with the face tracking. And once that happened, a lot of the other game parameters changed, and it was definitely a living process as we went through those 8 weeks.
But nothing in particular that was a particular technical standard. It was iterative, just kind of bit by bit moving through.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, per my previous comment about having done a little bit of Hangout development before this, we knew to stay away from some certain things and to approach things from a different angle. So, as the Resin guys said, the peer-to-peer system wasn't quite robust enough for them. So we took the route of using a centralized server from the beginning, just to make sure that we could get things up and running quickly, and have something that could traverse the globe in these toolkits, and then ultimately scale out to a public version.
And I mean, on our end, it's like, if things aren't bumpy, it's not advertising. It's certainly not innovative advertising. So if they're not bumpy, is when I get concerned.
I mean, Brad broke his keyboard a couple times, but I'm not sure that counts.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I have a very important question for you guys now, which is who is the best at ping pong?
Oh well, Brad made it, so it's not.
So there's some cheats put in there.
Oh yeah, it knows his face and just
it tracks his face.
Oh yeah.
I feel that there's an unfair advantage to those who built it, but I won't get into this theory.
I've had a lot of practice.
So how are you guys? So Goodby, how are you guys going to have the folks at large engage with this? What's the plan to roll it out? What is the goal? What would be your ideal endpoint for this, as far as who gets involved and how they use it?
So the first iteration of the game actually launched during Ad Week, and right now it's available in several different toolkits that are kind of traveling around the globe at specific events. And then ultimately we're going to push out another phase that's specific to agencies. So the idea will be to really kind of tap into that motivation and that competitive nature to get creatives involved and really want to dominate and score the most points and kind of show their bragging rights off. So that'll be kind of the next rollout, and that video is a little bit of a teaser of that version to come.
All right, agency versus agency. Prepare yourselves, folks. Those of you on the call who are at an agency, start stretching out a little bit.
Absolutely, you might as well start limbering up now.
So one final question for you guys, the same question that I asked the folks over at Resin is, what if you had one piece of advice to give to people who are trying to develop a Hangout API that's something that's going to be really fun and engaging, that sounds like just like the Resin folks, you guys did this in a very short period of time. What's your one piece of advice on the creative side and one piece of advice on the technical side?
You know, I think from a creative standpoint, it takes time. But as we said, the platform allowed for allowed a lot of room for exploration and creativity, and I think that was a really exciting part of the process. As we really dug into it, our creatives were had a lot of range. So while it took time, it's definitely a doable platform and an exciting platform to work on.
I think to that point too, I would just add from the creative standpoint, as account people love to do, that I think you shoot for the stars and see how close you can get to it, right? It's like anything else you're gonna try and do. Don't limit yourself and just try and make some really cool stuff. So.
Right on. And Hook, anything from the technical side that you would say is the one thing to keep in mind when doing this stuff?
I would say one thing that's important is to make sure that you have sort of a well thought out testing regime sort of when you get to the beta of the product, like sort of, especially if you're trying to work on a multiplayer game, you need to develop enough test cases. As with this platform, you need to coordinate your testing with multiple people to make sure that it plays across all the possible scenarios that can come through in a Hangout. So making sure that people can enter and exit a Hangout at any point. So making sure that if you're building a game or something, that no matter when a person comes in or comes out, or what happens, or how many people are in the Hangout, that the game adapts so that everybody is sort of seeing the application in a way that makes sense when it's made available to them. And just sort of, there are many more scenarios that can happen when you're building something like in this sort of system than if you're just building a game that two people would play on sort of the same computer or something like that.
Right. All right, so that's a great point, that with Hangouts, it is something where people are, that's good, I hadn't even thought of that, people are popping in and out. How do you handle that situation? Yes. So, Jonathan, hanging out over on the West Coast, what are your thoughts on both of these, or questions for these guys?
Well, I guess I'll touch on the last point. Hangouts are very dynamic. You never know when a user's going to join, when they're going to leave. Somebody rejoins, like we lost GSP for a few minutes, and they just pop back in, and nobody was the wiser. So shh. Thank you for the example, because it teed me up. And so when we designed the API, we added those features into the actual platform. So as a program, you can know when somebody joins and when somebody leaves, what order they joined, and have your app respond to that. And say, maybe throw up a loading screen saying, there are 4 people playing this game right now, you're next in the queue, or change the table. If it's poker, you can add another person to the table and things like that. So just as Hangouts are dynamic and responsive, we've made the API in such a way to allow that functionality.
Great. And just to do a quick wrap before we get to the questions that people have sent in, start with Resin. Folks at Resin, now that you have Jonathan captured here on camera, what would be the one or two things that you would love to see from the Google Plus APIs that he guarantees he's going to do, or at least will try? It's early in the morning, so if you don't have anything, Jonathan's fine with that.
That's easy. That's right.
It was all pretty good. I guess one thing, like I mentioned before, some of the debugging stuff was quite noisy, and as part of the polling to get all the network data going back and forth, it seemed to slow down the Chrome debugger quite a bit. Do you have any plans to maybe change the way that system might work to make it a little bit more efficient, perhaps?
Yeah. So starting with debugging, both groups said that was a challenge for them, and we know that. But it actually, what's the funny thing that ends up happening, everybody who works on this big scale project, they all figure out that debugging's hard, and they write their own debugging, infrastructure or system or toolkit, right? So I've seen a bunch of people do the exact same problem. So first thing when we start out is part of our weekly office hours. We've been educating people on best practices for debugging and some of the tips and tricks that we were seeing in the wild. Definitely cleaning up the tools is high on our priority, and making it the debugger better and changing the API to make it better is things that we're definitely on target for to fix. In general, I think you guys all did the same route. Using the client, using the Chrome developer tools is a powerful system and actually gets you pretty far along. So combining us fixing it and just taking better advantage of the tools there, I think solves most people's problems.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too much of a problem. Once we realized that having the consoles and things open would slow down after a while, we built some little things on screen that would output the text and stuff like that, and that worked pretty well from then on.
But yeah, we can always do better.
All right, and now Goodby and Hook. Any thoughts for Jonathan if he could grant you a wish for your next project?
Chris and Brad might have some others, but first of all, I want some of John's famous gelato. He keeps posting it all over the place, but nobody gets any. So I'm going to make that my number one.
One thing that would be helpful would be maybe a little bit more complete access to the participant's person object from the Google API, because there's a lot of it'd be nice if you get, like right now you get sort of the person's profile image, their name, and a few other things, but it would be nice if there was some way to pull in more of their person object to possibly get like their location or any of the other, there's a large data set that comes with a person being a Google Plus person. It would be nice to possibly have access to some more of that in Hangouts without needing to rely on the Google Plus REST API.
I also think it would be nice to, people I think get a little bit confused when they're loaded into an app invited to an app from somebody, and they have to click on the left bar to load it up. Maybe a streamlined way of auto-loading the app for people, like we're able to do with our initiation URLs, or if we put the GID into the URL. But if that was kind of automated through the API, I think that would help a lot of people in terms of.
Yeah, an easier way to direct launch the apps would be better, because it's a little difficult right now.
So starting with the first question, gelato. I make gelato at home for anybody who doesn't know that, and I did a hangout on air teaching people. But yeah, it makes about a pint a trip. So I don't think it'll make it all the way to you guys, but if you visit San Francisco,
it's frozen all the way to Michigan. Just put it outside. It'll get here.
I believe in California. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the person. I think it's a great piece of feedback. We're always trying to improve that. We're also trying to improve the REST API to provide more data. I think you can expect more things down there in the future. But was there pieces of data besides the location that you would love to use, or just it'd be great if it was better?
I think that there's a lot of different options in there. I don't have anything specific, but I know there were a couple things sort of that we had talked about during the project that if we had been able to sort of pull data in from that person object, and part of it depends on how much the person is filled out.
Right.
But if there were, I could envision apps where posts that people had put up or something like that could be important, or if you're trying to make an app, any sort of app that would involve connecting people with other people in their circles would probably need to start with the person object, or at least some way to get access to their connections. And I mean, you can grab some of that right now with the REST API. It's just it's sort of in two places, and I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing it as sort of the two were merged a little bit more, because they're sort of, to me, they sort of serve they're sort of two parts of a similar ecosystem.
Got it. Noted.
All right. So we will wrap up with by taking a couple of the questions that have come in via the moderator. The first question, very important, out of LA. How long did it take to make the headbands? It's a key question that has come in. I think they were pre-made. I cannot tell you how long it took me to get the wristband. I was just given it. I think the headbands are a fantastic touch, and you guys should keep those at all times.
I shower.
They never come off.
Right, never.
The second question is, what technology is used on the back end to make people ridiculous together? I think that we answered that. I mean, essentially, it's the Google Plus API, specifically with regards to Hangouts, right? Like it's very easy to make people ridiculous together with that particular piece of technology. But a question that came in that I thought was actually pretty key was, besides Hangout games, and I'm reading this here, what other types of innovations are possible using the Google Plus API? And that's from Daniel out of Miami. So what else are you guys looking at besides, these are both kind of gaming elements in Hangouts. Are you looking at other ways to use that API? Is there other things that you guys have thought about before but decided not to do? Or have you been mostly focused on the Hangouts kind of gaming element?
Well, I think one thing that we're really excited about, especially with our agency tournament eventually launching, is we want to get the creative eyes to see where this platform can go and what people can do with it. And we thought having an agency tournament would be a really fun way to kick that off, and gave us the opportunity to sort of start that conversation.
And I would say from working with a lot of partners who've been building apps and just the developer in the garage, we see about 3 major types of apps that are being built. The game is a great use case, especially because it's fun and engaging. But a big chunk of them are around broadcast. So Hangouts on Air, you're doing like we're doing right now, a broadcast video that's streamed over YouTube and Google Plus. It's kind of hard to manage. So switching between who's in camera, their mic volume, all those kind of things, building tools around broadcast. And the other one is taking traditional productivity style web apps and bringing it into a collaborative platform like Hangouts. So I'm Symphonical out of Denmark, I believe. They have the traditional Scrum boards with post-it notes all over the place, but you can drag and drop across the board. They're doing that in real time, and they have a web app that's kind of cool, and they get a lot of use out of it. But when they brought it to a Hangout, now it's totally immersive. It's like the distributed teams are right there, and they're all doing project planning and working on the same board together. So it's games, productivity, and broadcast.
Great. All right. Any last comments in general or questions for Jonathan, folks on the call? Resin, Goodby, and Hook?
I think we're good.
Everyone is good. All right. So thank you guys so much for jumping on in various time zones and various parts of the world to discuss how you guys built these incredibly fun applications, which, by the way, for those who are watching, can be found at creativesandbox.com. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about the Geo API, so for those of you interested in that, tune in then. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining, and hopefully one of you will develop a 3D application for the API so this works next time we try that. All right, thanks guys. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you.